Testing. 1, 2, 3. And now, a haiku. He read the phone book. He remembered everything. He knows where you live. Greetings. My name is Zoe. That's spelled Z-O or Z to the O for those of you outside of the U.S. And this is Backlook Cinema, the podcast. Thank you for downloading or streaming. We really appreciate it. This is the 138th episode. We watch movies of yesteryear, the ones that we loved when we were growing up in the latter half of the 1900s. And we're going to take a look back at these incredible films. If you like what you're about to hear, tell your families, tell your friends, and tell that charming neurodivergent fellow and his little brother about Backlook Cinema, the podcast. So as you might know, we were supposed to have a guest come on today, Mr. Casey Box from the podcast An Evening at the Movies, but we weren't able to make a connection today. Things came up, so we're going to truck right along because we have to. We've got to do this. We have to continue the show. How does the saying goes? I can't remember. Something about showbiz, nothing stopped the show. I can't remember anymore. Anyway, let's move right along. We're going to go to our first segment, the opening credits. So we're going to talk about the movie Rain Man. And this was, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I saw this movie like back when it first came out. I can't remember if I saw it in theaters or if I saw it at home, but I can tell you that I immensely enjoyed it. And it's one of the most popular movies that came out during that time. It had some amazing work from the actors and the directors that were involved in the movie. Just very impressive all the way around. And I can't wait to get into all the nooks and crannies of this movie. But first, let me tell you a little bit about this movie, Rain Man. Raymond Bobbitt is a man who's used to his routines. He knows exactly what's for breakfast on any given day. He knows exactly what time his favorite show, The People's Court, comes on. And he knows the exact address of his favorite Kmart, 400 Oak Street. He knows these and a multitude of other routines. And the fact that these things happened or existed when and where and how they should gave him all the security and comfort that he ever needed. Suddenly, he got a visit from a car that he recognized, driven by a man that he remembered, and he swept up in a road trip that's filled with wonder, danger, and most distressingly, a disruption to his routines. But that's all right. As he tells it, he's a very good driver. This movie was released December 16th, 1988, produced by United Artists, the Gruber Peters Company, and Star Partners 2 Limited. It grossed over $173 million in the U.S. and Canada and over $354 million worldwide on a reported budget of $25 million. Now, that's in 1988 dollars, so let's adjust that for inflation. So in 1988, $173 million would translate to $456 million. So that's, in today's market, that's a healthy chunk of change. That's pretty good. And then you go over to the worldwide gross. So that's the gross all around the world. $354 million translate to $934 million today. In today's context, it's almost a $1 billion movie. It's almost a $1 billion movie. You get a movie that's grossed over $900 million and you've only spent $66 million to make it. Obviously, that doesn't include the budget, but still, I mean, the marketing budget, obviously. That's what I meant to say. But still, that's to say that this movie overperformed is an understatement indeed. And $66 million is the inflated version of $25 million that the movie cost in 1988. So let's check out who is starring in this movie. This movie had appearances from Dustin Hoffman. He played Raymond Babbitt. You may have also seen him in Tootsie, Kramer versus Kramer, or Dick Tracy. Also starring Tom Cruise as Charlie Babbitt. He's also been in Valkyrie, Tropic Thunder, and Collateral. Valerie Golino, I hope I'm saying that right, plays Susanna. She's also been in Hot Shots, Portraits of a Lady on Fire, and Human Capital. Gerald R. Molin played Dr. Brunner. He's been in Days of Thunder, Jurassic Park, and Amistad. And finally, we have Michael D. Roberts. He played Vern. He's been in A Star is Born from 2018, Hostage, and The Ice Pirates. And you can catch The Ice Pirates on episode 71. I don't know if I can recommend The Ice Pirates. All I can tell you is that I liked it, and I like Michael D. Roberts in it. There were a lot of other actors, but it really only focused on the characters of Raymond and Charlie Babbitt, and everybody else kind of just popped in and out. But and it's a road trip movie, so you're really only going to focus on these two characters. This movie was directed by Barry Levinson. He's also directed Man of the Year, Wag the Dog, Sleepers, Bugsy, and Good Morning Vietnam. And I hear tell that most of these movies are good. I don't think I've seen any of these. I might have seen Sleepers. And shamefully, I've not watched Good Morning Vietnam. But yeah, and I only say that because I've always wanted to watch it, and I just hadn't gotten around to it. This movie was written by Barry Morrow and Ron Bass. So Morrow wrote Gospa, Race the Sun, Mercy of the Sea, and All You Ever Wished For. And Bass is responsible for My Best Friend's Wedding, Entrapment, What Dreams May Come, and Waiting to Exhale. And I covered that one in episode 97. Now, what's interesting is that Morrow does not have a huge filmography. He hadn't written a lot of theatrical releases. He has a few TV movies, but he doesn't have a thick IMDb. He is basically and mostly known for developing this story. And I got a little bit of trivia about that later on. But basically, he came across an incredible person and decided to write a movie about it. And I think Bass is kind of responsible for doing a lot of the heavy lifting, only because I'm looking at his resume and it's like he's written a lot of great movies. So I think the combination of Morrow and Bass really put together an impeccable script. So the music in this movie is by Hans Zimmer, and he was the conductor of the music in this film, and he is noted for many movies, including Dune, Wonder Woman 1984, The Lion King from 2019, Blade Runner 2049, and Dunkirk. And I want to give a special shout out to the main theme that kind of opened the movie is a pop song by this group called the Bell Stars. And everybody knows this. It's kind of, when you think of this movie, you don't necessarily think of Hans Zimmer's score, which is fine, but that's not the one that you think of. You think of the song Aiko Aiko. And it's the song that opens the movie. And it's kind of out of place. Because it's a Mardi Gras song, and the movie does not take place in St. Louis. It's there's no part of this movie that happens in St. Louis, and don't even know if it happens around Mardi Gras. It's just kind of like a fun and joyful sounding song that is traditionally played around the time of Mardi Gras, and it's kind of a playful battle between Mardi Gras crews that do kind of like it's a kind of a call and response song that they sing to each other, and it's kind of like a playful battle. And the lyrics of the song are quite brutal. There's a part of the song that says, "My grandma is going to set your grandma's legs on fire," and I think they mean it. And and the gist of the song is "I'm serious, don't mess with me." It's almost kind of like a warning, but it's so playful you'd never know it, and they don't actually say that in English. It's kind of like a coded meaning in the song, but it's such a joyful and playful song that opens up the movie, and I just wanted to give a special shout out to that song as part of the music, and that is it for the opening credits. I don't really have any announcements, only to say that I'm going to try to start doing weekly episodes now. Think that I am ready to start doing that. I put out a bunch of episodes last week, kind of close together, because I didn't properly space out the episodes, the releases. I didn't properly space out the releases, but that was me trying to get back into the mode of releasing weekly episodes. But that's the only thing I wanted to announce thus far. So let's go on to finding out what my top 5 favorite parts of Rain Man are. All right, we're back. We're going to talk about my top 5 favorite parts. And I was talking slowly because I just had some problems with my equipment, and I just making sure I was pressing the right button. So I'm thinking about my favorite parts, and it's kind of hard to just pick out parts. There are a lot of iconic moments in this movie. A lot of when you talk about or get into conversations of Rain Man to people, that there are certain parts that they think about, and that's what I'm trying to drum up here as I think about my favorite parts. Now, if you're familiar with the movie, and you should, the short of it is that you have this kind of self-important salesman with a small business, but it's a small business in that he only has like 2, 4, 5 employees, maybe 2 employees. It's not exactly clear, but it's definitely a small operation. But he's handling hundreds of $1,000s in cash, trying to sell big ticket items, and he's kind of a self-important type dude. And he finds out that his father died. His father is a very well-off man, and he goes to I'm not sure if he goes to the funeral, or he's called by the lawyer for the reading of the will, or the executor of the will, or something like that. Anyway, he goes to the reading of the will. I can't remember if there was a funeral. And it's funny that I can't remember because I just saw this movie last week. But at any rate, he goes to the reading of the will, and he is left with a car that he always wanted to drive, and a rose bush, and that's all his father left him. Meanwhile, his father left a mysterious benefactor $3 million. So he's understandably upset about this. And so now he's devising the scheme to find out, because as far as he is concerned, he's his father's only son. So he's trying to figure out how he can get what he thinks is rightfully his. He thinks that he's going to basically challenge the terms of the will, and he's going to try to figure out who this other person is that got this inheritance. So he goes and tracks down this trustee, and turns out that the trustee is in charge of an institution for people with special needs. And he goes there, and the guy basically says, I'm entrusted with this money, and I'm not going to give you the money. And so Raymond leaves the office trying to figure out how, another scheme to get his inheritance, or the inheritance that he feels is rightfully his. And on his way to his car, there's a man that kind of recognizes the car and sort of recognizes him. And the only way that this man is a very unique car. So the only way that this man could recognize this car is that that this man knew his father. It turns out that this man is his brother. This man is in the institution. He's one of the residents of this institution. And he finds out that this man is his brother. And he has special needs. He is neurodivergent. So the salesman, Charlie Babbitt, having discovered that this man in the mental institution is his brother, Raymond Babbitt, decides to kidnap Raymond to go on a road trip to try to force the trustee of his inheritance or the inheritance that he thinks that should be his, to try to force this man to give him his money, to blackmail this man. So he's going to take his brother Raymond Babbitt from the institution, which is somewhere in the Midwest, to, I think, Los Angeles, where he works. And the movie is essentially a road trip because Raymond can't take airplanes. So they're going to drive all the way for several days till they get to Los Angeles. And that's where the adventure is. That's where the adventure ensues. That's when the two people learn about each other and they bond with each other. And by the end of the movie, Charlie does not want to bargain with the institution for his brother anymore. He now wants to be, he actually thinks that he should be the main caregiver. He's like a changed man because of his experience. So that's the gist of the movie. And so when I go over some of my favorite parts of the movie, it's hard to choose. Like, one of my favorite parts is the song Aiko Aiko. That's, whenever I think of the movie, I think of the song. I can't not think of the movie and not think of the song. And the only time I ever think of the song is when I'm thinking of the movie. So it's very integral to the movie, even though it doesn't really make sense in the context of the movie. And at the same time, you only really hear it once, right? You only hear it in the beginning. I don't know, maybe there are threads of it in the composition of the main song, or maybe you hear threads of the song throughout the movie. I don't know if I can remember that. I only remember that you only clearly hear the song in the beginning of the movie. But I think it's because the song is so catchy. It's the reason that I can call it one of my favorite things in the movie. I also want to make a note that Cruz, who plays Charlie, he kind of looks like a Patrick Nigel painting. If you're not seeing a Patrick Nigel painting, the best thing I can tell you to do is to look it up on the internet. You've seen this type of painting before. It's hard to describe. It's like what it looks like when you look at it on in a magazine, or maybe you've seen a poster of it. Like, if you ever seen a very old poster in like a barbershop or a beauty salon, and it's a line drawing of a very pale woman. It's usually a woman, and the woman usually has like jet black hair, and it's a very simple shape of hair. It's like you don't necessarily see the threads of the hair, but it's a very simple shape of her hairstyle. And then there aren't really any facial features except for maybe her eyebrows, her eyes, in that you can see her eyeliners and her eyes, her pupils and irises, and then her lips, and maybe just a suggestion of a nose. And you can kind of get the feel of what I mean when I'm talking about a Nigel painting. And that's kind of what Cruz looks like in this movie, especially with the certain shot. He's rocking that hair really hard. And so it's very noticeable. Not necessarily a favorite part. I just wanted just a thought that went through my head as I watched the movie. So I had mentioned that the work that the actors were doing were really impressive, and of particular impression is Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman is really doing the work here. Playing Raymond. He's autistic and he's a savant, and it is just his mannerisms and the way he moves. His acting is incredible. He's been referenced in I know that he's been referenced in other movies, but I think the clearest reference is when he's mentioned in Tropic Thunder. He's referenced in that movie, and that's my favorite reference to this movie. It's a very incredible piece of work that he did. I think, in my opinion, it's probably his best work because as an actor, you have to act like somebody that's not you. You're acting outside of yourself. And some of the best work in acting is either you're playing a real life person. So basically you have to, like, it's an autobiography, or what am I saying? Not an autobiography. That's a book. It's a biofilm or bioflick, and you're playing a real life character or a real life person that people actually knew. So your job is to act as much as like that person as you can. So you really have to step outside of yourself in order to do something like that. And the other thing is to do what Hoffman did and just play just a different person than you are. Cause like most times when you're acting, you're using the actors using a lot of themselves in most of their roles. So it's basically they have to build the character. Like it's not something that anybody's familiar with. So what I mean with the character that they have to build, it's like if it's a new character, so the actor really has the responsibility of building that character, and it's kind of on the actor to build the character. And so they start with themselves. So in a lot of cases, when an actor is doing a job, a lot of themselves are in the character that they're building. But an actor really stretches himself when he has to act completely different from who they are as an actor. I feel like I'm babbling. Am I babbling? I'm sorry about that. But I feel that that's what Hoffman is doing. He's really stretching himself to act as a person who's totally different from themselves. And in a way, he's kind of doing a thing where he's acting like a real life person, a person who actually lives. It doesn't come from nowhere. He's drawing his character from a true life person. And we'll get into that later on. That probably has a lot to do with why his acting is so good. And Cruz as the really frustrated younger brother trying to figure out how to get by in this life, how to basically take care of his brother. Like he basically kidnapped his brother, and now he has to figure out how to take care of his brother because his brother has very particular needs, and that frustration in dealing with somebody who has particular needs is it really bleeds through in Cruz's performance. So they really complement each other in their work, and it's very impressive. So yeah, I guess my favorite part of the movie is whenever Hoffman is on screen as Raymond and he's doing his work. That's one of my favorite parts. Another, and along those lines, one of the highlights of that, and a highlight not because when he does this, there's a thing that he does in the movie that, it's like it kind of frightens you and terrifies you, and it's unsettling. That's the best way to describe it. And so there's a part in the movie where Charlie wants to get on an airplane to get to Los Angeles, and he's trying to get his brother Raymond to get on the airplane, and Raymond does not want to get on the airplane. It's like they're actually already at the airport. All they really have to do is go to the ticket counter and buy the tickets. And it's like, it's one of those, it's back in the olden times when you can just walk up to the airport and buy a ticket and just get on the plane, right? You can buy a ticket and get on a plane right before it takes off. I don't know if it's that way now, but getting through security back in those days was a breeze. So he was just going to get on the plane and go, but Raymond is not wanting to go. They're just in a hallway, and Raymond is like what happens is that they're in a hallway and there's a loud jet noise, and Raymond looks out the window and he goes, uh-oh, there's a plane out there. Like, and Charlie, being frustrated, is like, yeah, we're at the airport. What did you think we were doing? And he was like, yeah, we're going to get on a plane. And that's, Raymond's like, okay. And then he says, no, can't get on a plane. And so what happens is that they list, like, Charlie talks about a particular airline that they get on. It's like, we can get on this airline. And that's when Raymond says, no, we can't get on that one because that one has had such and such crash, and these many people died in that crash. And then Charlie names another one. It's like, no, we can't do that one. We can't do that one because this many people died in that crash. They had this many crashes. Like, he's spouting off statistics of airplanes crashing and people dying. And Charlie is just going down the list of all the airlines that they could take. And Raymond is just shouting all of them down. I mean, he's not shouting, but he's just, for every airline that Charlie can make, Raymond is telling him the statistics of the crashes and the lives lost. And then Charlie, being frustrated, says that there's no airline that hasn't had a crash. All airplanes crash. It's the safest way to travel, but all of them have crashed at one time or another. And Raymond says Qantas hasn't. Qantas has never had a crash. But obviously they can't take Qantas because Qantas doesn't have a flight from where they're at to California. I think Qantas is a Australian airline. So that was funny. That was a funny part. But the thing that's terrifying is that Charlie is going to try to force, like, he's going to try to drag Raymond into the further into the airport. And Raymond really doesn't want to go. And he starts freaking out. He starts panicking. He starts screaming. He starts beating himself in the head with his hands. It's very traumatic what's happening to Raymond. The thing is that he's terrified of flying because of what he knows about flying, what he's read. And also that he's being forced to do something that he's terrified with. So, and that is the thing that is unsettling in this scene, that it makes it most memorable. And there are a couple other times that he does it, but I think this is the first time you see it. So the first time you see it, it's quite unsettling. So this is definitely, it's weird to say that it's my favorite part, because when you think of your favorite part, you think of the things that bring you joy. But I say that it's a favorite part because it's one of the most impactful parts in the movie, when you see how terrified and unsettled Raymond is, and the way he transfer his unsettled nature into you as you're watching the movie. Right? You're going to feel his pain. You're going to feel his terror, and I think that transfer of emotions is impressive nonetheless. So skipping down to some other things that happen. Like there's a thing where he's like, obviously after that they have to drive because Raymond is not going to fly. There's a lot of things that Raymond isn't going to do. For example, Raymond is not going to travel when it's raining because when he was in the institution, they didn't go outside. So a lot of the things that he did in the institution, Charlie has to repeat. Like, so Raymond knows the meal schedule at the institution. So Charlie has to repeat that meal schedule. So if they were supposed to have pizza on Monday, then Charlie has to find pizza on Monday. If they were supposed to have hot dogs on Tuesday, then Charlie has to find hot dogs somewhere on Tuesday. So that hampers the trip. When the prices, well, the People's Court is the thing. When the People's Court comes on, Raymond knows exactly when the People's Court comes on, and Charlie has to find a television so that Raymond can watch the People's Court. So that, the trip is already hard enough, so they have to find the People's Court so that Raymond can watch it so that the trip could go smoothly. This is so important that Charlie buys Raymond a portable television. And that's incredible. It's because this thing is huge by our standards. Let's just say that it's huge by our standards. It's almost the size of a shoebox, but it's a TV that once Raymond has it, he watches it all the time, and that kind of he's not missing any of his shows with that portable TV, and probably cost a couple of $1,000s. They don't like showing by it. They just show Raymond with it. It was a Sony TV, and Sony wanted to make sure you saw that TV so that you would get curious about it and that you would buy it. But I get the feeling that it was very expensive because I did not see this TV out in the wild in real life. So, these are all things that kind of make the movie charming. Another one of my favorite parts, one of the most impactful parts, and this is because when I think of this movie, I think of this part. I think of this because I hadn't seen this movie in a long time, so this is one of the few things that I remember. So the part where Charlie discovers the Rain Man. So the movie's called Rain Man because Charlie, in very early part of the movie, like near the beginning of the movie, he talks about how he had an imaginary friend named Rayman when he was growing up. Now, all this time, as far as he remembers, he's an only child. And he remembers as a child, he had an imaginary imaginary friend named Rain Man who would sing to him whenever he got upset or whenever he was scared. The Rain Man would come and sing to him. And then they're in the hotel. Charlie and Raymond are in the hotel, and they're having a conversation. And in this conversation, Charlie realizes that he used to call Raymond Rain Man, and Raymond used to sing to Charlie when Charlie was a baby. I think they're 10 or 15 years apart. I don't exactly know, but Raymond is much older than Charlie. And so Raymond used to sing to Charlie as a baby whenever Charlie got upset. And this is what Charlie remembers. That's why he thinks that it's an imaginary person, but now he's realizing that the Rain Man was real. The Rain Man was his older brother Raymond singing to him as a child. And it's a scene where he discovers this. And Raymond happens to have a picture of himself holding young Charlie as a baby, and where he discovers all of this. So that's a real touching moment. The moment is clutch when he discovers that his imaginary friend was real, and that his memories were real, and that he now remembers, in a way, he kind of remembers that he had at one time an older brother. And then through the course of it, you kind of discover like the origins of why why his brother was sent away. So they're in the bathroom and Charlie turns on the hot water in the tub. I guess they're going to prepare a bath. And then Raymond gets upset again. He starts screaming. He starts hitting his head again. And he says, hot water burn baby, hot water burn baby. He's just screaming that aloud. And then Charlie has to go through everything to calm him down. And that was the inciting incident. And apparently there was hot water and Raymond was probably about to put young Charlie into the bath water. And his father yelled at him, don't put the baby in the hot water. The hot water will burn the baby. And Raymond got sent to the institution after that. That's what caused Raymond to be sent to the institution, because his father realized it was too much a responsibility for him to try to raise Raymond and Charlie. So that was, I liked how it kind of, it was kind of an exposition without really sounding like an info dump or sounding too much like an origin story. It just kind of happened organically the way it was done. That's why I really like that part. It's kind of like a revelation. I like the revelatory nature of that scene. So that it really worked out well for me. My final favorite part, I mean, there are plenty of others, but if I start listing all of my favorite parts, I'm just going to end up narrating the movie, and I'm trying to avoid doing that. So my final favorite part is that Charlie learns how to exploit Raymond. So the thing is that Raymond has an incredible memory. He remembers everything that he reads. That's why he knows all the statistics on the airplanes, because at some point he had read it in a newspaper, or he probably read these things in a magazine. He reads an incredible amount of books. He reads incredibly fast, and he remembers everything that he's exposed to. He also has an incredible mind for mathematics. You can give him any mathematical problem and he will solve it instantly. Like, no matter what the figures are, he will solve these math problems. The other thing is that he has an incredible gift of counting. I guess that's a way of putting it. So not only can he remember everything that he ever reads or sees, for that matter, you can drop a pile of toothpicks on the floor and he can instantly count them and tell you how many toothpicks were on the floor. Whether they're in a pile, they're lined up beside each other, it doesn't matter. He can count the toothpicks instantly. And Charlie kind of discovers by accident that he could use Raymond to cheat. In Las Vegas, they happen to be in the Las Vegas area. Charlie kind of gives Raymond a crash course in blackjack, and then they drive to Vegas and they get like these expensive suits and they get these expensive hotel suites, and then they go and they start playing blackjack, and they start winning. They're winning so much money. And it's just a thing where that Charlie kind of learns how to exploit Raymond. There's something about that I enjoy it. I think it's less that I enjoy it and more that it's one of the most impactful events in the movie. And it's one of the things that you remember about the movie. At least I remember. You remember the scenes where you have Charlie and Raymond in the casino, and Raymond is just counting 6 or 7 decks of cards, and Charlie is in a situation where he just can't lose. I think he wins like $80,000. I can't remember the exact amount, but he wins a lot of money. And obviously security is looking at Raymond and Charlie, but they can't figure out what they're doing. But because the problem with Charlie is that Charlie is greedy and he's not losing any of the hands. He's just winning every hand. So because he's not like winning carefully. He's winning recklessly. The security has decided that he's cheating. There's like they can't prove it, but they decided that he's counting cards, and they allow him to keep his winnings, but they basically kick him out of hotels. I think they let him stay in a suite until the end of his stay, but they say he's got to go. He's got to get out and take his winnings. And it's like, we've already told all the other casinos about you, so there's no place you can go in this town. So you might as well leave. But he's on a good foot because he had gotten to the point where he had basically lost his he had run out of money. Basically, his while he was on this road trip, his business had basically gone into the toilet. He lost all the money that he had invested in his business, and he still owes probably hundreds of thousands of dollars to people who made down payments on these cars that he was supposed to be selling people. They wanted their deposit back because they didn't want to buy the cars anymore because it was taking too long for them to get the cars. And all of these things had accumulated into Charlie basically running out of money. So this winning in Vegas had basically kind of put him back in the black. Now he has a lot of money and he could basically pay off the people he owes, and he still has some money left over. But the thing is, it kind of makes you think, well, let's skip to the end of the movie. Like, he's at the end of the movie, he now has affection for his brother because he's learned a lot about his brother and how his brother had, basically his brother is special to him now. Now, I don't think it's because his brother had helped him with gambling, but him living with his brother, learning to live with his brother, is like he has some moments with his brother where he taught his brother to dance, and he let his brother drive the car in the driveway of the casino because his Raymond kept asking to drive the car, and because their father used to let Raymond drive in the driveway really slow. And the car itself caused a lot of tension between Charlie and their father. And that was a special moment where Charlie allowed Raymond to drive the car. So he's gotten closer to his brother. So when it came time to basically arbitrate and decide what the final disposition of Raymond was going to be, because the person who was holding the money from the will was not going to give Charlie the money. And he was determined to bring Raymond back to the institution because that's just the best place for him. Charlie is really not equipped to take care of his brother. His brother needs to be in an institution. So they so he kind of fights for his brother or fights for, he tries to plead his case in that he could take care of his brother. But at the end of the day, I think he realizes that he's not really equipped to take care of his brother. So his brother goes back to the institution he promises to visit. But I can't help but wonder, would he have had this affection for his brother had his brother not kind of financially bailed him out? Had he not been able to exploit Raymond's abilities in order to gamble and win thousands and thousands of dollars? It makes you think. And I don't know, because, he's frustrated the whole time. It's like he has a story arc where he goes from basically kind of being really self-centered to having an affection for his brother, but he's really still kind of, he still has a ways to go. Let's put it that way. He kind of has a ways to go. He's still a little bit self-serving. He's still a little bit greedy. I don't think he's fully learned. He's still on the journey. And I think that's one of the things I like about the movie is that he's still in a position where he needs to learn. I'm like, he grew a little bit. but he needs to learn. He needs to grow a little bit more. And I like that he's not like fully it's not like in other movies when you have character development, the character is completely changed by the end. He's not that dude. He's not that dude that's completely changed. And in that way, it's kind of like in real life, where in real life, you're not always going to go through a miraculous transformation. It might take a little while. It's going to take some time for you to have a wonderful transformation. So I think that's the deal with Raymond and Charlie, especially Charlie. I meant to say Charlie. Now, because Charlie is the one that needs to be changed. Raymond is not going to change. He's just going to be the way he is. So that's it for the favorite parts, the 5 favorite parts of the movie. And now I'm going to go over to the top 10 trivia. All right, this is the top 10 trivia. Most of these things I've gotten from IMDb, and there's one that I kind of gloss over one, and then I kind of reiterate this particular piece of trivia at the end. You'll see what I mean when I get to it. So, during filming, Dustin Hoffman was unsure of the film's potential and his own performance. 3 weeks into the project, Hoffman wanted out, telling Barry Levinson, "Get Richard Dreyfuss, get somebody, Barry, because this is the worst work of my life." Hoffman would nab his second Best Actor Academy Award for his work. The next one. For in-flight viewing, several airlines deleted the sequence in which Raymond Babbitt reels off the statistics on airline accidents, except Qantas. Director Barry Levinson admitted that Ray's comment about Qantas being the only aircraft company to never have had a fatal crash was made up, and that he didn't know if it was true. In reality, Qantas has had 8 crashes, all prior to the making of the film, but they were all propeller-driven planes, not jets. Therefore, what Raymond Babbitt says about Qantas jet airplanes was, and still is, true. Third piece of trivia, Dustin Hoffman spent a lot of time with savant Kim Peek, the inspiration for the character of Raymond. Rain Man writer Barry Morrow first met Peek in 1986, and on winning an Oscar for the screenplay for his movie in 1989, he gave the Oscar trophy to Kim Peek. Hoffman made Kim's father, the main caregiver, a promise that he would share Kim with the world. For nearly 20 years until his death, Kim Peek went all over the world, impressing people with his incredible memory and ability to recall minute details from centuries of history. The elderly man in the waiting room who talks on and on about the Pony Express is Byron P. Kavner, an 89-year-old local who was in the waiting room when the crew arrived to film there. He got to talking about his favorite subject, the Pony Express, and director Barry Levinson got such a kick out of it that he let Kavner keep talking as the cameras rolled. His dialogue was spontaneous and not scripted. If you kind of look up Rain Man Pony Express scene on YouTube, you should see. It's funny when you look at that scene, knowing that this dude was just talking, that he was just talking about the Pony Express, and he's not an actor, and he wasn't given a script, and these aren't lines. This is just him talking about the Pony Express during the scene. And in the scene, it's like Raymond is quiet. Charlie is trying to have a conversation with the nurse and trying to get the doctor to see the nurse so he could learn more about Raymond's condition. And this guy is just talking about the Pony Express. It's fascinating when you know that the dude is not an actor. Up next, Sir Michael Caine revealed that Tom Cruise's performance in Rain Man was one of his personal favorites of all he'd ever seen on film. Kane found out somewhat late in his adult life that he had a brother who he'd never been told about, who had lived most of his life in Cane Hill Mental Hospital with a debilitating diagnosis of epilepsy. With great sincerity, he said, "Tom's performance was beautifully done." He went on to say that Dustin had the showy part. Tom's required great discipline and a responsibility to draw the viewer into Raymond's point of view, as well as portray the painful acceptance of the limitations of his brother's condition placed on their level of familial intimacy. So Mr. Kane really felt that part. He really felt, because he was in Charlie's shoes. Charlie, played by Tom Cruise, he was really in those shoes. So I can see how that having his circumstances being almost exactly the same as Charlie, how that might impact him emotionally. Up next, Dustin Hoffman was originally hired to play the part of Charlie Babbitt, but after being moved to tears seeing a savant named Leslie Lemke, who is blind and mentally handicapped and has cerebral palsy, play 4 concertos on the piano by ear, he decided to play the part of Raymond Babbitt instead. So that's incredible. Up next, the film first opened with a disappointing $6 million in revenue. However, in the following weeks, it generated great word of mouth amongst movie viewers, allowing the movie to steadily climb up to the #1 slot. And I am not sure if that could happen today, or if it's happening today. Like a lot of times when a movie starts off and it doesn't generate that much revenue, I feel like studios just kind of pull it. They just pull it from the theaters before it has a chance to grow. And the other thing about it is that, like, there's no other place to go when you release a movie into theaters. Like, a movie's in theaters and you really have to try to give it a chance because there's no like backup plan. I mean, eventually it's going to be released on video cassette, but you can't trust it. Like, if people haven't seen it in the theater, you really can't trust that people is going to find it in video cassette. So it was just, they were in the right time when you can just leave a movie in theaters just to see how it does. And this one did extremely well. Next up, Dustin Hoffman insisted that Raymond Babbitt should be an autistic savant instead of being mentally disabled. His assistant was largely responsible for director Martin Brest quitting the project. So I didn't dig too much deeper into the particulars of this. Martin Brest is a very well-known director, and he's directed some great films. I know that there are some films that I've covered that he directed. But Dustin Hoffman decided to be a difficult actor that day. And I think it may have had to do something. They say instead of just being mentally disabled. So I wonder if they had intended Raymond to be have I don't know, something different. It's hard to say because his character is supposed to be based on somebody that actually lived, and we'll get into that later on. And the next bit of trivia. During the shooting of the casino scenes, Dustin Hoffman would go off and play games like blackjack. After production was halted to look for him, someone was assigned to watch him during takes. Because Dustin likes to gamble. Dustin likes to play the ponies. Dustin needs to buy baby a new pair of shoes. I think that's what the deal is. So this is what I was alluding to. I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier in the trivia, and this is where I was talking about Dustin Hoffman was basing his performance on a real life person. So as mentioned before, Barry Morrow based the character of Raymond Babbitt on real life mega savant Lawrence Kim Peake. Morrow met Kim Peake at a conference in Texas and was flabbergasted at Peake's abilities. Peake was neurodivergent, had a low IQ, and needed help his entire life with basic tasks like getting dressed, or brushing his teeth. He had an incredible reading ability, and he's estimated to have read over 12,000 books, and he remembered and could recite everything that he ever read. He could take as little as 10 seconds to read a page and could read 2 pages simultaneously, 1 page for each eye. He could remember which day of the week any historical event happened or tell a stranger the day of the week that they were born on just by knowing their birth date. And he could recall important historical events that happened on that birthday. The Raymond character and Kim Peek were similar in many ways, except that Raymond is described as a high-functioning autistic, but Peek was not autistic. He was believed to have FG syndrome. And most of this I gathered from allthat'sinteresting.com, and this was edited by Kalina Fraga. So that's it for the trivia. I hope I found something that was interesting to you, something that you didn't know about the movie, something that was fascinating. And also, look up Kim Peek on YouTube. And I think I remember seeing some of this when I was growing up, because he was on TV a lot. He went to a lot of different TV shows and just performed incredible mental feats, reciting just random facts, seemingly random facts that he remembered from any of the multitude of books that he wrote. So if you watch it on YouTube, you'll see what I mean. He is often described as the real life Rain Man. His father basically carries the Oscar for Rain Man. It's the Oscar that the writer got. So he carries the Oscar for Rain Man to all the appearances when him and Kim Peek go on tour to show Kim Peek's abilities. And there's a picture of Morrow and Kim Peek. Kim Peek is sitting in the car that was used in Rain Man, and Morrow's holding the Oscar, and there's a photograph of that. So he's basically stayed close to the family for at least until the end of Kim Peek's life. So that's it for the trivia. Let's head on down and see what the critics thought. All right. On Rotten Tomatoes, the critics gave it an 88%. Audiences have it at 90%. And on IMDb reviews, it's at 8.0 out of 10. So very high on IMDb. This is very impressive. So the first critic I have is Barbara Beck from Philadelphia Daily News. She wrote, Dustin Hoffman's portrayal of Raymond is light years away from the junk lug Lenny of Mice and Men or the deaf-mute girl in Johnny Belinda. It is quite simply the most memorable and passionate performance of the year. Yeah, this is obviously a contemporary account, but yeah, I'd agree that it's definitely a fantastic performance. Pauline Kael of The New Yorker wrote, everything in this movie is fudged ever so humanistically in a perfunctory, low-pressure way, and the picture has its effectiveness. People are crying at it. Of course they're crying at it. It's a piece of wet Keats. And so I didn't know what Keats was. And so I looked it up, and the definition of Keats is, it's a loan word from German. It's a term that it's applied to art and design that is perceived as naive imitation, overly eccentric, gratuitous, or of banal taste. A Friend in Need, a 1903 dogs playing poker painting by Cassius Marcellus Coolidge, is a common example of modern Keats. I got that off of Google somewhere, the definition. So anyway, people think of dogs playing poker, that if you've ever seen those paintings of dogs playing poker, that's an example of Keats. And she's saying that that's what this movie is. And I can't agree with her. I disagree. It could be, or I don't know. I don't know what's going through her mind. I don't get it. People get funny around emotional movies, I guess. I couldn't tell you what was what her experiences was for her to write this review. I don't agree with it, though. Up next, we have Eleanor Ringo Cater from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. She wrote, Mr. Cruise showed enormous promise in his early films, Risky Business and All the Right Moves, but since then he's been on cruise control. Here, he's back at work and it shows. In less obvious ways, the younger actor is every bit Mr. Hoffman's equal. Yeah, he's, I can't find Tom Cruise doing a bad job. It's like I every time I see him, he's impressive. Even in the most recent Top Gun movie, Top Gun Maverick, it's just kind of like even though it's kind of just a retread of the original Top Gun movie, he just makes that movie work. It's just this, and he just has an incredible way of conveying his emotions to the audience, and he's just even when he's in like just a, I don't know, just a run of the mill, just a color by numbers movie. Even when he's in a color by numbers movie, his abilities are able to elevate that movie. His performance puts it on a different level. So finally, we have Michael Scrogall of the San Francisco Examiner. He wrote, the script falls back on the most common dramatic device in this year's sitcoms. A yuppie's humanity is touched for the first time when he's thrust together with a new family member. Well, I don't watch a lot of sitcoms, so I don't, he said sitcoms. I'm thinking about rom-coms. And maybe that is an episode that they do every once in a while they're on their second season, 15th episode. You might have a long lost family member show up. And, but I don't know. Those episodes just work. They did it kind of reminds me of the Will Smith episode when his father comes around and Will Smith tries to reconnect with his father. But his father turns out to be a piece of crap, and his father left him again. And Will Smith is an emotional wreck. You know what? That episode works. It still works. I guess it's a trope that you can do over and over again, and it's going to work every time, I guess. That's it. We've reached the end of the episode. So you can catch Rain Man on streaming, and I'm going to try something different next week. Well, really, it's not that much different. I'm going to, there's a lot of conversation about Dune's part 1 and 2. And I really enjoyed those movies. And I hear tell that there's going to be a Dune part 3, or maybe they'll call it Dune Messiah. And I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. Those are great movies. Those are really good. They really impactful. And it basically made me want to take a look at one of the earlier adaptations of Dune. So next week, join me as I talk about Dune from 1984. And you can follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Backlick Cinema. Don't forget you can contact us with any questions, comments, or suggestions at fanmail@backlickcinema.com. And please leave a 5-star review on Apple. Leave a star on Spotify. We really appreciate that. And one last time, if you like the show, then please help us grow by spreading the word about Backlick Cinema, the podcast. Believe me, it matters. Spread it on the socials. Tell your friends about it. Tell your family about it. Tell your special loved one about it. Tell your mama about it. Tell everyone about Backlick Cinema, the podcast. I've been Zoe Richardson. Be safe. Show a movie from yesteryear with your family. Hug your loved ones. And if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.